Hey everyone, welcome back. We're diving into some pretty intense stuff today. Uh, China and Taiwan. Things are heating up over there, and we're going to try to break it down.
Yeah, it's a really complex situation.
Definitely complex. We've got some interesting excerpts from a recent Financial Times article to dig into,
Oh, yeah, I saw that one.
and it really paints a picture of, well, China's making some pretty bold moves and statements.
They are not messing around, it seems.
Right. Like one of the things that really jumped out at me was this massive new command center they're building in Beijing.
10 times the size of the Pentagon. Can you believe that?
It's hard to wrap your head around just how big that is. I mean, think about it. The Pentagon is already enormous.
Exactly. So you got to wonder what they're planning to do with all that space.
Well, the article kind of hints that it's meant to be like a central hub for their leadership in case of, a conflict.
Which is kind of unsettling when you consider everything else that's been going on.
Totally. And speaking of everything else, they've been running all these military exercises lately.
Huge ones simulating a blockade around Taiwan. Fighter jets, warships, ballistic missiles, the whole shebang.
So it's not exactly subtle, is it?
Not at all. They're definitely sending a message. I mean, this command center, it's not just about projecting power.
Right. It's about having the infrastructure to manage a huge and complicated conflict.
Exactly. They're preparing for something big.
And then there's the rhetoric coming from Chinese officials. Some pretty strong language being used.
Oh, yeah, that quote from Wang Wenbin, the spokesperson for Chinese diplomacy, it's pretty intense.
He said something about separatist forces ending up in blood with their heads broken right.
Yeah, that was pretty much it. Strong words.
Definitely meant to make people take notice. So who do you think they're really trying to reach with a statement like that? Just Taiwan, or is there a broader audience?
It's probably both.
You know?
A warning to Taiwan not to declare independence, and a message to other countries like, hey, don't even think about getting involved.
So it's basically like a double whammy of intimidation.
Pretty much.
But here's the thing that I find kind of interesting. Even with all the saber rattling, China's still talking about peaceful reunification.
Right. They're pushing this idea of commercial diplomacy.
Yeah, what is that exactly? I mean, I read about it in the article, but I'm still not totally clear.
Basically, it's using economics and trade to create stronger ties between mainland China and Taiwan. The idea is if they're more interconnected economically, then maybe they'll be more willing to reunify peacefully.
So it's like a softer approach alongside the hardline military stuff.
Exactly. They're trying to work on multiple levels.
So with all that in mind, what do you think is more likely? Peaceful reunification or some kind of military action? I mean, especially considering how much firepower China has at its disposal.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
really hard to say. China definitely seems to prefer the peaceful route, but they're clearly preparing for other possibilities too. And their military is nothing to sneeze at.
No kidding. They've been developing some pretty scary weapons.
Like that DF-21D anti-ship ballistic missile. They call it the carrier killer for a reason.
Yikes. So that's designed to take out aircraft carriers.
Yep. And it's a big threat to any naval forces in the region.
It's pretty unsettling to think about what a conflict over Taiwan would mean for the rest of the world.
It would be a huge deal. Taiwan's a major player in the global economy, especially when it comes to semiconductors.
So if there was a war and Taiwan's production got disrupted, it would have ripple effects everywhere.
Absolutely. Everything from our phones and computers to cars and medical equipment would be affected. And then there's the geopolitical side of things.
Right. A conflict in that region could easily draw in other major powers and escalate into something even bigger.
Exactly. It's a very delicate situation.
So to recap, we've got this massive new command center, a lot of tough talk from Chinese officials, and this two-pronged strategy of commercial diplomacy and military posturing. What a mess.
It is a mess. And one thing we haven't really talked about is how the people of Taiwan feel about all this.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. What did the article say about that?
Well, it said that most Taiwanese people don't want to reunify with mainland China. They want to keep their independence.
And they're taking steps to defend themselves too, right?
Right. They're increasing their military spending and strengthening ties with countries like the U.S. and Japan.
So it's not just China calling the shots here. Taiwan's pushing back in its own way.
Exactly. And that adds a whole other layer of complexity to the situation.
So basically, we've got China flexing its muscles, trying to woo Taiwan with economics, and Taiwan saying thanks, but no thanks, and preparing for a potential fight.
That's a pretty good summary.
It's a lot to think about.
Man,
And it makes you wonder what's going to happen next. What are the key factors that are going to determine Taiwan's fate?
that's the big question, isn't it? There's so much at stake.
Definitely something to keep an eye on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, everyone. We'll be back next time with another fascinating topic.
See you then, eh?